Being busy is not the same as being productive because activity alone doesn't guarantee progress toward meaningful goals. Many people live in a constant state of motion, filling their schedules with meetings, messages, errands, and endless lists of small tasks. They wear business like a badge of honor, believing that being constantly occupied equals success. But if you stop and look deeper, most of that effort doesn't actually move them closer to the results they want. They confuse effort with effectiveness. Productivity is not about how much you do, it's about what you accomplish and the impact of those actions. Being productive means your energy and time are directed toward things that matter, things that bring tangible results or long-term growth. Being busy, on the other hand, often means reacting to circumstances rather than intentionally shaping them. When someone is busy all the time, it usually means they are trapped in short-term thinking. They're responding to what's urgent instead of what's important. The inbox, the phone calls, the notifications, all demand attention, but very few of these things actually contribute to meaningful outcomes. The irony is that many people stay busy to avoid thinking deeply. It feels easier to stay in motion than to pause and question whether that motion has purpose. It's uncomfortable to reflect because reflection often reveals inefficiencies, misplaced priorities, and wasted effort. Productivity, however, begins with awareness. It starts by asking, what am I really trying to achieve, and which actions directly lead to that outcome? Without that clarity, business becomes an emotional shield, a way to feel useful without truly being effective. In a world that glorifies hustle culture, people often mistake exhaustion for achievement. They think long hours equal hard work, and hard work automatically equals success. But there's a difference between hard work and smart work. The person who works 10 hours without direction might end the day drained but no closer to their goals. The person who works 4 focused hours on high-impact tasks can achieve far more. Productivity is about leverage, doing fewer things that produce greater results. Business is about volume, doing as many things as possible without questioning their value. The human brain loves the feeling of checking off tasks, but not every task deserves your attention. Some of them are distractions disguised as progress. True productivity comes from intentionality. It requires slowing down to plan, to prioritize, and to align your efforts with your bigger vision. It's not about saying yes to everything, it's about choosing what truly deserves your focus. You can't do everything well, and trying to do so spreads your energy thin. The most successful people aren't those who do the most, but those who choose the few things that matter most and do them exceptionally well. Business keeps you in constant motion, but productivity creates measurable change. One creates fatigue, the other creates momentum. When you're busy, you're reacting. When you're productive, you're creating. And creation always requires direction and clarity. Being busy also gives a false sense of control. It feels productive to fill your day with motion, but it can be a way of avoiding difficult decisions. The mind prefers the illusion of progress over the discomfort of facing inefficiency. Productivity demands honesty, the kind of honesty that forces you to confront wasted time, redundant tasks, and unclear goals. It asks you to think long-term instead of just surviving the day. To be productive, you need to design your day around priorities, not interruptions. That means protecting your time, setting clear objectives, and having the discipline to say no. Every yes to something meaningless is a no to something valuable. The real difference between busy and productive people lies in what they say no to, not what they say yes to. Business drains you because it lacks fulfillment. You might feel active, but not accomplished. Productivity, on the other hand, creates a sense of progress, a feeling that your time is building something meaningful. It aligns your daily actions with your purpose. The moment you understand this difference, you stop trying to fill your calendar and start designing your life. Movement without direction leads to stagnation because no matter how much energy you expend, if you don't know where you're going, you'll keep ending up in the same place. Most people mistake motion for progress. They feel that as long as they're doing something, working long hours, attending meetings, chasing new projects, they must be advancing. But progress requires intentional direction, not just activity. A person running in circles will never reach a destination no matter how fast they move. In life, the same principle applies. Without clarity of purpose, without defined goals, and without a sense of where your actions are supposed to lead, all your effort becomes movement without meaning. You might feel productive because you're constantly busy, but in truth, you're simply repeating the same patterns that keep you stuck. Direction provides focus. It tells you which path to take, what to prioritize, and what to ignore. Without it, your decisions become random responses to whatever happens around you. You may find yourself constantly shifting from one thing to another, a new opportunity, a new goal, a new distraction, yet never finishing anything that matters. This creates the illusion of progress while keeping you trapped in the same cycle. People often say they don't have enough time, but what they really lack is direction. When you don't know your true destination, every path looks tempting. You start saying yes to everything, hoping one of those things will take you somewhere valuable. But that's not how growth works. Success is not about doing more, it's about doing the right things with purpose and consistency. Having direction also means having a framework to measure your progress. When you know what you're working toward, you can evaluate whether your current actions are bringing you closer or further away from that outcome. Without direction, there's no feedback loop, no way to know if what you're doing actually matters. You end up repeating old habits because there's nothing guiding you toward better ones. This kind of stagnation can be subtle. You might still appear active to others, but internally you sense the frustration of being stuck. The energy you put out doesn't come back as growth because it's scattered, unfocused, and misaligned. Direction channels your energy into meaningful results. Without it, even your best efforts dissolve into wasted motion. One of the biggest reasons people avoid setting clear direction is fear. When you define a goal, you create the possibility of failure. If you never decide where you're going, you can't be disappointed when you don't get there. So people stay in constant motion, convincing themselves that they're moving forward, when in fact they're just avoiding the truth. Real direction requires vulnerability and discipline. It demands that you stop and think about what truly matters to you, what you're willing to work for, and what you're willing to let go of. It's uncomfortable because it forces you to confront your limits and make choices. But those choices are what separate motion from progress. Without them, no matter how hard you work, you'll end up exhausted instead of accomplished. Direction gives your actions meaning. It transforms effort into strategy and motion into purpose. Think of it like steering a ship. The ocean is vast, and no amount of rowing will get you to your destination if you don't know where the port is. The same goes for your life or career. You need a compass, a vision that defines where you want to go, and then you need the courage to adjust your course whenever you drift. Otherwise, you'll spend years working hard and wonder why you haven't moved forward. The world rewards clarity, not chaos. Every successful person, every breakthrough, begins with someone deciding what truly matters and aligning their actions toward that end. Without that alignment, no amount of speed or activity will create progress. Movement without a direction feels like progress in the moment, but it leads only to more motion, not evolution. Reflection and clarity are essential for real progress because without understanding where you are and why you are doing what you're doing, it's impossible to move forward with purpose. Most people are caught in a cycle of doing, reacting, and rushing. They rarely pause long enough to think deeply about whether their actions align with their goals or values. Reflection is the process that brings awareness to your choices. It allows you to step back from the noise and analyze what's working, what's not, and what needs to change. Without reflection, you become blind to your own patterns. You keep repeating the same mistakes, chasing the same short-term rewards, and wondering why things don't improve. Progress doesn't come from constant action. It comes from deliberate learning. Reflection turns experience into wisdom, and clarity turns wisdom into direction. Clarity is what gives reflection power. It's not enough to think about the past or to review your actions. You need to extract lessons from them. Clarity means seeing things as they truly are, not as you wish they were. It means being honest with yourself about your weaknesses, your blind spots, and your priorities. Many people avoid reflection because it forces them to face uncomfortable truths. It reveals inefficiencies, misplaced energy, and emotional habits that keep them stuck. But without that discomfort, there is no growth. The people who make real progress are the ones willing to sit with their mistakes, learn from them, and use that insight to make better decisions. Reflection gives you data about your own life. Clarity helps you interpret that data and act accordingly. Every successful system in the world, whether it's in business, science, or personal development, relies on feedback loops. You take action, you observe the outcome, and you adjust your behavior based on what you learned. Without reflection, there is no feedback, only repetition. You can work hard for years and still end up in the same place if you never stop to assess whether your approach is effective. Reflection slows you down, but it also makes your next move sharper. It's the pause that allows precision, People often think they don't have time to reflect, but in reality, not reflecting costs more time in the long run because it leads to wasted effort and wrong turns. The few minutes you spend thinking can save you hours of pointless work. Clarity also brings emotional balance. When you reflect deeply, you understand why you feel stuck, anxious, or unmotivated. You begin to see the root causes instead of just reacting to symptoms. This awareness helps you make decisions from a calm, grounded place instead of from stress or fear. Clarity cuts through confusion. It turns vague desires into concrete goals and transforms overwhelming challenges into manageable steps. Without clarity, even the best opportunities can look like chaos. You end up scattering your attention because everything seems equally important. But once you have clarity, you begin to see what truly deserves your energy and what doesn't. That's when progress starts to accelerate naturally. Reflection and clarity also work together to build resilience. When you regularly reflect, setbacks become data instead of defeat. You stop personalizing failure and start learning from it. You realize that mistakes are part of the process, not the end of it. Clarity allows you to see those failures in context as stepping stones rather than barriers. Every great innovator, leader, or investor spends time in reflection because they understand that clarity is the foundation of good judgment. When you're clear about your goals and your principles, you don't waste energy on distractions or unnecessary emotions. You make better choices, not because you know everything, but because you know yourself and your direction. Reflection gives you insight, clarity gives you focus. Together, they create the awareness necessary to evolve rather than just repeat. Focusing on what's important, not just what's urgent, is one of the hardest but most transformative habits a person can develop. The modern world is designed to pull attention in every direction. Notifications, deadlines, meetings, and emergencies constantly compete for space in the mind. These urgent things create a sense of pressure and immediacy, making it feel like they must be handled right now. The problem is that urgency often disguises itself as importance. Urgent tasks make you feel active, but they rarely create lasting value. Important tasks, on the other hand, are the ones that shape your future, build your foundation, and lead to meaningful results. The difference lies in time perspective. Urgent things demand short-term action. Important things require long-term thinking. When people spend their lives reacting to urgency, they lose sight of the bigger picture and end up trapped in a cycle of constant stress without progress. Most people don't realize that focusing on what's urgent gives them temporary relief but long-term frustration. It feels good to solve immediate problems because it produces a sense of accomplishment. You check off a list, send a reply, meet a deadline, but none of these necessarily move you closer to your ultimate goals. The mind confuses completion with achievement. Important work often doesn't provide that instant satisfaction. It's slower, deeper, and requires patience. It's the kind of work that involves strategy, planning, reflection, and delayed gratification. Writing a vision, building a skill, nurturing relationships, and improving health. These things rarely scream for your attention, but they define the quality of your life. The people who make real progress are those who discipline themselves to focus on what truly matters even when the urgent distractions are loud. Focusing on the important requires clarity about priorities. You have to know what your most valuable goals are and why they matter to you. Without that clarity, everything starts to look urgent because you can't distinguish between what's essential and what's not. This is why so many people feel overwhelmed. They treat every demand as equally important. When you lack priorities, urgency wins by default. But once you know what's truly important, you begin to make intentional trade-offs. You realize that saying yes to one thing often means saying no to another. You start protecting your time like it's your most precious resource, because it is. Every minute spent reacting to the urgent is a minute taken away from building something meaningful. Another reason people get stuck in urgency is fear. Urgent tasks feel safe because they are clear and measurable. You know what needs to be done and you can see immediate results. Important work feels uncertain. It involves the unknown, requires thought, and doesn't always deliver instant payoff. But that's where growth happens. The person who constantly chases urgent matters stays busy but never transforms. The person who focuses on the important builds systems that eventually reduce urgency altogether. It's like the difference between putting out fires every day and building a structure that doesn't catch fire in the first place. One keeps you occupied, the other moves you forward. Training your mind to focus on the important means slowing down enough to think strategically. You need moments of stillness to review where your energy is going and whether it aligns with your long-term vision. Reflection helps identify which urgent tasks are distractions and which actually support your goals. Over time, this creates a shift in mindset from reactive to proactive, from surviving the day to designing your life. The key is not to eliminate urgency entirely, because some urgent matters are genuinely critical, but to ensure that urgency doesn't dominate your schedule. When you focus primarily on the important, you begin to work on causes instead of symptoms. You make progress that compounds, not just activity that fades. This focus separates those who constantly struggle to keep up from those who quietly move ahead with purpose. Discipline means saying no to distractions, and that single principle determines the difference between a life of scattered effort and one of focused achievement. In a world overflowing with opportunities, information, and endless stimulation, the real challenge is not in finding what to do, but in deciding what to ignore. Distraction is no longer a small interruption. It has become a way of life for many people. The constant pull of notifications, entertainment, and social validation drains attention before meaningful work can even begin. Discipline is the act of protecting that attention. It's the strength to choose long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure, clarity over chaos, and depth over shallowness. Without discipline, even the most talented and intelligent people waste their potential because they can't sustain focus long enough to make consistent progress. Every distraction comes disguised as something harmless or even productive. A quick message, a minor task, or a quick check of the news feels insignificant, but each small interruption breaks momentum. The mind works best when it can enter deep focus, the state where time fades and creativity flows naturally. Each time a distraction pulls you away, it takes several minutes to return to that state of depth. Over a day, this constant switching fragments attention so much that you end up busy but accomplish little. Discipline creates a boundary between what matters and what doesn't. It teaches you that saying no is not about rejecting opportunities. It's about preserving your ability to do what's meaningful. The more disciplined you are with your focus, the more control you have over your outcomes. Saying no is difficult because it requires self-awareness and courage. Many people say yes to everything because they fear missing out, disappointing others, or losing potential opportunities. But every yes comes at a cost. Time and energy are finite resources, and each commitment consumes a piece of them. Without the discipline to set boundaries, you end up scattered, overwhelmed, and emotionally drained. Real discipline starts with understanding your priorities and then having the strength to defend them. It means deliberately choosing not to engage in activities that don't align with your goals, even if they seem tempting. It's about valuing your time enough to protect it fiercely. You cannot build anything meaningful if your attention is constantly divided. Discipline also means managing internal distractions, the ones that come from your own mind. Procrastination, doubt, and emotional impulses are just as disruptive as external interruptions. The disciplined mind learns to observe these urges without obeying them. It recognizes that not every thought deserves attention, and not every feeling requires a reaction. Self-mastery comes from practicing restraint, from delaying gratification, and from staying committed to a plan even when motivation fades. Progress is rarely about intensity, it's about consistency. The disciplined person understands that growth is built through daily repetition of small actions, not occasional bursts of inspiration. Saying no to distraction is what allows those actions to compound over time. Another truth about discipline is that it creates freedom. People often think of discipline as restriction, but in reality, it's the foundation of independence. When you can control your impulses, manage your time, and focus your energy, you become free from the chaos that controls others. You no longer react to every demand or distraction because you have defined what truly deserves your attention. That clarity gives you peace. It gives you space to think, to create, and to live intentionally. Without discipline, you're constantly pulled by forces outside yourself, trends, opinions, obligations, and temptations. With discipline, you move from being reactive to being proactive. You take ownership of your direction instead of being pushed by circumstance. Saying no is not rejection. It's the most powerful affirmation of what you stand for and what you're building. Measuring success by growth, not activity, is one of the deepest shifts a person can make in how they approach life and work. Most people are conditioned to measure their success by how much they do, how many tasks they complete, how many hours they work, or how busy their days appear. But doing more doesn't necessarily mean becoming better. Real progress comes from growth, the gradual and consistent improvement of one's skills, mindset, and understanding. Growth changes who you are, not just what you do. It builds capability, wisdom, and resilience. Activity, on the other hand, often creates the illusion of progress. You can fill your days with endless motion, yet end the week, month, or year no closer to your true goals. Measuring success by growth means asking not, how much did I do, but how much did I improve? Growth requires awareness and reflection because it's not always visible in the short term. You can work hard and see no immediate result, but internally you're building the capacity that will create long-term success. Activity gives you instant gratification. It feels productive in the moment. Growth requires patience because it happens slowly and quietly. It's the difference between planting a seed and watering it every day versus rearranging the soil to look busy. Many people prefer activity because it's tangible. It gives them something to point to. Growth demands humility because it asks you to value unseen progress. You have to be willing to fail to learn and to keep improving even when it doesn't look like much is happening. Over time, this mindset compounds. What looks like small, invisible growth today becomes extraordinary results later. Measuring success by growth also means shifting focus from outcomes to development. Outcomes matter, but they are often outside your full control. Growth, however, is entirely in your hands. You can't always control the results of your actions, but you can control how much you learn from them. Every challenge, mistake, or obstacle becomes an opportunity to evolve. This mindset transforms how you deal with failure. Instead of seeing it as a setback, you start seeing it as feedback. Growth-oriented people don't chase constant validation through activity. They seek understanding through experience. They're not obsessed with looking successful, they're obsessed with becoming capable. That difference is what separates those who achieve lasting success from those who only appear busy. The culture of business makes this shift difficult because society rewards visibility more than progress. People want to show they're working hard, staying active, and constantly achieving. But the most meaningful growth often happens in silence, away from public view. It happens in the hours of reading, thinking, practicing, and improving when no one is watching. Growth is internal before it's external. Measuring success by growth means valuing depth over speed and substance over appearance. You stop comparing yourself to others and start comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. That's the only metric that truly matters because it's the only one that ensures constant evolution. Focusing on growth also creates sustainability. Activity burns energy, growth creates energy. When your focus is on learning and improving, every effort feels purposeful. Even when the outcome isn't perfect, the process feels rewarding because you know you're becoming better. This mindset eliminates the frustration that comes from temporary failure because you understand that every step, even a small one, contributes to long-term development. Over time, growth-oriented people build confidence not from what they achieve, but from knowing they can adapt and improve. That adaptability becomes their greatest asset. When you measure success by growth, you stop chasing endless to-do lists and start cultivating mastery. Each day becomes an opportunity to refine your thinking, strengthen your discipline, and expand your perspective. This is how real success is built, not through the noise of constant activity, but through the quiet and steady progress of growth.